And welcome back to Wall Tactics. We're here with a special Way of the Wall with Mr. James Jones, also known as Mr. Initiative from Mr. 40K in 40 Minutes. So today we're going to talk about the state of the orcs, get to know James a bit about himself, and just overall give some tips and tricks, advice, and opinions that new, intermediate, or maybe experienced players can get along with. So like always, let's get stuck in, lads. But first, let's talk about today's sponsor, Mr. Baron of Dice. The Baron of Dice have hooked us up so that we can do our paint competition. So shout out to Mr. Baron of Dice. Of course, check out the description because 5% off as nobody likes taxes. So get yourself a set of Baron of Dice because they have great quality. Everybody gets stuck in with them. I promise you, you will not regret it. We are not shills. So here we have Mr. James. Welcome, sir.
We are not shills. That is a great line. I love that.
I just threw it in there just specially for this stream. So everybody, this is live. So of course we will be responding to chat. Say what you got to say. We will be reading it. We got some questions here that were put in, but we'll also go into questions that people put out. So hello, Mr. James Jones. So most people will know you from 40K in 40 minutes. How about you give us a little download of how you actually got there, but who you actually are. That way we're not just stuck wondering about you, just Mr. Initiative.
Okay. So who I actually am is an alien. I was sent here. No, I'm just kidding. I'm just a normal fucking guy, just like the rest of you guys. I mean, honestly, I just play some Warhammer, and I was just lucky enough to be involved in a circle that decided to make a YouTube channel.
And you were telling me about how JT and you were on the actual team competitively, which is how I got in contact with you about your performance at an actual team's event. So where do you find yourself on like the competitive scale, casual, where you at now? Were you ever a sweaty, like what's up with that, right? When you first got in, were you an angry boy?
No, I'm not. I'm a super chill player. I mean, honestly, there's a social contract between players. We all got to have a good time. It doesn't matter it doesn't matter if they want to be sweaty. I don't care. It's not going to hurt my time. I'm still going to try hard. I'm going to try to win. I'm going to do my best. I don't know. You lost me. There was so much going on there.
It's cool. So did you play ever highly competitive?
Oh, like hyper competitive. So I do play Stormland Space Wolves as well. And I'm really trying to show up. It's more of a gatekeeping kind of army, and I'm just doing it to control other people who are maybe a little too sweaty in the meta. I'm going to throw a little jank at them and see if they can deal with it, stat check them. But no. I just like to make sure that everybody's having a good time when we're playing. Honestly, man, it's the most important thing to me.
So you were never super competitive, but you like to bring the strong, well-known lists or the
casual competitive. Casual competitive. I'm not going to get steamrolled by anybody.
Just to kind of meet. No, that's cool. So you kind of just rise to the bar, we'll say, or raise to the occasion when people come up with their sweaty mean list. Let's say JT kind of needs a sparring partner. You come in there with what you got and you actually get stuck in. But all in all, were you really a hobbyist? Is that how you started 40K or what? I
started 40K as like a kid. I was like a younger kid. My first exposure to 40K was through a boarder who lived in our basement. He was a college student, and he gave me the Rogue Trader originals rule book, and I ended up and one miniature. It was a Eldar with a chainsword or something. Mm-hmm. And I showed it to a friend of mine, and we found a local store that sold them, and we bought the skirmishy little units, and we played each other. And I played like that up until about 3rd edition. At that time, I had maybe 50 troops, and then I got, I started to drive, and I fell off of the hobby for a while, and then came back in my early mid 20s and been playing ever since. Honestly, I played since 5th edition. So,
okay. So you kind of your hobby, we'll say your artistic skill kind of raised as you grew as an individual in the literal sense,
yes.
Right?
I'm honestly still painting my miniatures the same way I painted them when I was in my 20s. I still kind of paint that heavy metal style, like the old school style, like base coat, dry brush, highlight, wash.
Okay, yeah, like not like slap chop like you were talking about before the stream, right?
Well, I mean, don't get me wrong. I slap chopped recently. Like I did 30 Orc Boys in about, I want to say 3 hours. I just did them. Like I said, I just did a dirty slap chop on them. They were the bone splitter boys, but I cut one hand off all of them and then just gave them a slugger.
There we go. That looks awesome.
Yeah,
I love the AOS too about that.
Tons of skin, right? Tons of skin on them. So when I slap chopped them out, it was super fast, and they were like done. I was like, haha, there's 30 Orc Boys.
I used airbrush on my I started doing that. All right, so when you started, you've been a pretty much lifelong 40K enthusiast. Unlike me, on the other hand, I started 8th edition. Really,
that's all right.
Get involved in it. Wasn't really stuck in. I was somebody who saw competitive kind of streaks for a little bit at first, like a lot of people do when they get into it, and then came back around and realized really enjoying the hobby as it is as a whole is a better way to go. And that's what that's what every person that's been lifelong or stuck in 40K since they were kids pretty much says. So it's the consensus you come to regardless at the end of the day, right? A lot of the really, really competitive players are also good hobbyists as well. So we have a couple questions for you, right? And one of them, like I asked you before, is from Otis. What is your favorite Orc clan? So this isn't a detachment rule. This is your actual Orc clan. So tell me why. I'll answer and respond as well, just for the sake of it.
Okay, so for painting, I have two. For painting, Death Skulls all day. I love painting blue orcs. It's the biggest piece of my collection is definitely Death Skulls. But I mean, Orc, like Goths. At the end of the day, I got to say Goths, Gazgul Goths.
That goes with your heavy metal style, no? The golf color and everything when you paint it too?
Yeah, the checkers and stuff. Hell yeah.
Okay, well, I only have one answer. When I first started, though, I will say that's how I started painting my orcs with Death Skulls as well, right? I know when I started 40K, it was like blue because I'm lucky, so I started painting blue when I first started as well. But I have a fondness for blood axes, so I have a fondness for blood axes. Surprisingly, it makes me feel like there's a clan that's actually seeking the full potential of orcs, because they seek both being brutal but cunning and cunning but brutal, right? So I feel like they don't limit themselves, therefore they're more likely to actually achieve greatness as orcs, because they're actually having a diverse way of thinking. The one book was The Catachan Devil. That kind of book kind of really plays it out. Did you listen to that book or read that book?
I have not, but a buddy of mine is really into Astra Militarum, and he was like saying its praises. I should definitely get around to it.
Yeah, there's a couple orc books that I was really into, and that one I really, really liked. They gave a good double-sided view. And I'm a good Astra Militarum fan, just like most veterans are, I guess. It's a stereotype. All right, so another question here is, what's your favorite dread mob or warhorde? In reality, this should be worded as, what's your favorite orc detachment currently in the codex, right? So let's say, let's say, we know that some of them might get changed, so we don't want to say what's the strongest and stuff like that, but
no.
What do you?
And honestly, I couldn't tell you which one's the strongest. I mean, in the hands of the right player, you could crush with any of the top three,
Yeah, for sure. So
I'm going to say, we talked about this before the stream, and I think Green Tide is my favorite. I love a Green Tide, man. Is it the strongest? No. Is it break your back trying to play it? Hell yes. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Having a pile of your orc boys dead on the side of the table too, sometimes when you're just picking them up and shoving them and you're like, hold on, I'm counting them to make sure I still have my invuln, or before how it was, and then you're like, all right, I'm gonna regen some guys. How many do I got left? Okay, put them back in the body. You just have so many bodies you're playing with. It feels really good to play Green Tide. That's how I started 40K. So
dude, I'm terrible too, like talking about modeling. I will take my models and like put them into like little margarine containers because it's quicker. You know what I mean? Just throw them in there in a heap between games.
No, absolutely, for sure. I know when I used to show up at an actual Warhammer store, right? You know, a Games Workshop, actual Games Workshop store.
Right.
A lot of the guys would come in with very nice cases, and they were all put together. And I was just straight up new, and I had Orc Boys, so I had just this cardboard box, and I just roll up to the table and be like, "All right, guys, let's play," and just put all the models on the table, and they'd be like, "Oh, you do that with your models?" I'm like, yeah. No, they're Orc Boys. They're good. Look, they're not even broken. Look, very squared up.
Yeah, I have 120 of them. It'll be fine.
Yeah, they'll be totally fine. So yeah, that's I'm with you right in there as well. If I had to give something different, I will say I've been loving playing Dread Mob. It seems like every game just gives you kind of like that orky randomness to it, where you can just go off with straight ton of damage, blowing people up, doing ridiculous damage, or you blow yourself up, right? You're just like, oh,
it's gratifying to kill things with shooting.
Yeah,
when you're used to doing all your best killing with melee, it is gratifying to kill things with shooting.
Yeah, it's you know, it's a combined arms kind of factor. The game's made to be played in all those aspects. We get charged the points for them, right? When GW does the points, they do the math behind it, even though they don't think about the fact that we're not usually shooting some of those guns, right? But we're still paying for those points, hitting on fives. So let's go. How about this one? I got a question just from the comments that I kind of wanted to bring up, just because I like this. Will you be getting the new Orc Tank Busters, and will you play them? So what do you think about the new Orc Wreckers, right? Those are new, what we perceive as the new Orc Tank Busters.
Like, you mean, what do I think of the models?
What do you think?
I think they're cool. I like the idea of Orc boys running around with a rocket hammer. I mean, I think it's hilarious. If he's one shot of mortal wounds, it depends how many they are. And if it's like, you know what I mean? Is it D3? Is it 2D3? Is it D6? Like, what is it?
Well, there's a couple things that we noticed. I think that they're 4-up armor save. So they do seem to be, you know, 4-up armor save is pretty notorious for a knob body. We did see at least the leader does have a larger base. So I am still thinking they're 1 wound boys, but with the 4-up armor save possibly. And that they can have different kits where they can where they can all have the same loadout as to they can be all shooting or all melee. So they can either have.
So you're saying there's potential that I can just use all my Tank Buster Rocket Boys from before?
Maybe.
I haven't seen any of the. I just seen the picture of the models, so I haven't looked at any rules or anything like that.
They haven't showed too many rules anywhere on that as well. But
okay.
Will I be getting them? Yeah, of course. Very exciting on those. They could be sick. We know that the old fine cast resin tank busters just aren't where they're at. I have my own set of them too. They're pretty old and clunky and bad rules, poorly written. These rules open up a bunch of different ideas, right? Where people go, now we can have different SWAT team combos where you can take one of those because they're a 6-man unit. So now they upped them. They're not 5, they're 6-man for the unit. So there'll be a good SWAT team combo. You can take one of those Wrecker teams and a knob with the war boss, or take one of those Wrecker teams and a flash kits and put those guys in trucks. So that could be pretty awesome for different kind of SWAT team diversity. That's where I'm seeing them. And you still get the bomb squig. I like the idea. Something that is a little bit more durable. We'll just see how they end up on points in their actual rules. But yeah, that's a good one. I'm excited for Orcs getting all these different kind of kits. You know, a lot of people we were getting kind of shoved, force-fed squigs for a little bit, weren't we? Now it's
that's true.
It's kind of nice to get something else in the kind of armor. Okay, what's another one? Boop. It said from Jank Tank. What has James liked about Orcs ever since MFM? What does he think they still do well? Has he done any narrative games a la Crusade? So if you ever played Crusade, we can just generalize it to at all, right? Have you ever been a part of Crusade games, League games, stuff like that? And how do you feel about what have you been guided to mostly playing since the field manual?
Oh, I see. Okay. Honestly, I don't have enough squigs to play Big Hunt really. Like I have the kill rigs and stuff like that. So that really had nothing for me. I was kind of like, I looked at it and went, I don't know how to make this work. This just sounds like worse armor content. So I avoided it. But I have experimented with the rest. Unfortunately for the Speed Freaks one, I also don't really have enough buggies. So I was like, I had theorized lists, but I never really played it. But as far as like Warhorde, Green Tide, and what are they called? Dread Mob. I've done tons of games with all of those faction or with all of those detachments. They were all really fun. In fact, I took the Bully Boys detachment about 2 weeks after the Codex came out to a GT, like a 30 plus player, maybe 40 players. And I came in 4th place, and I hadn't even practiced with the list at all. I literally threw it together like 2 days before the event and just showed up and came in 4th. And I mean, obviously I had the 18 mega nods and all that stuff, and it was just ridiculous. You know what I mean? I was just going to the middle like a brick, and it's like you're just shrugging everything off.
So your fault we got nerfed. So it was your fault we got nerfed. No, I'm just kidding. No, that's just how it felt. They did need to be changed. I'm not into For a Feel No Pain as a in the game mechanic, to be honest, too much, right? Not too much a fan of like
I agree. You should be paying command points for something like that.
Yeah, there should be a steepness. Like I like an enhancement idea from Warhorde that kind of makes it kind of cool. But just like a straight data sheet was, I could see how that was a bit much. I'm not really into a bunch of For a Feel No Pains than many units. So, and then have you ever done anything like a narrative, a crusade? Have you ever done anything like that?
Oh, right. Yeah. So here's the thing, like in my life, I don't really have time for like a narrative thing where it's like a repeated event to get through, a bigger game. And the only time I can find is for like just full on 40K. It's got to be pretty straightforward. I only get to play 1 or 2 games in a 2-week period. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I try to make and a lot of my circle of friends are really like big tournament players and stuff like that. And I have to bring it out for them so they can see what it is,
That's a lot of the time where I'm at too, right? If I'm going to get 1-2 games every 2 weeks, whatever.
I mean, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I play in a league, and I play 1 game. I get assigned an opponent to play a game for every 2-week period. And, even that sometimes is a struggle, trying to find time for that game.
Yeah, and it's like you said, where when you go to play though with those people that you do get games with, right? It should be mutually beneficial for both people involved. You may be seeing it purely entertainment wise, which is what happens sometimes with Orc players. We'll say new people where they bring like a straight meme and they get tabled in 2 turns, and neither of you really got a good rep in, or even somebody who's learning how to play the game and they're playing against someone who's really good, and the person's just dog walking them the first 2 rounds. It's just like, okay, this is not a mutual beneficial repetition. Therefore, when you come and play your friends that's competitive and they're doing something for a tournament, it is in your best interest and theirs to rise to the occasion, meet them with a good list, and give them a good, competent rep, which sometimes sucks when you're just trying to play your fun stuff, right? It's like,
it's true.
Like I tried to bring, the Hunter rig once, right, against my friends who, was a couple of them. These people have won their golden tickets, have qualified for GW championships, right? And I'm like, here's my Hunter rig at 20 boys. And they're like, dude, what? And then I get, I lose the game, and they didn't really give a good trade on that. I was like, oh well.
I actually was going to say, I used the Hunter rig on play on tabletop in a game, and 20 beast snagger boys and a beast boss jump out of it, and it was pretty funny.
It's fun. Yeah, pretty funny. See, you didn't say that was awesome and carried MVP.
I'd have to go back and watch it. I don't remember. I think I crushed him, though. Yeah, I think I steamrolled him with that shit.
It worked. I was using it because I enjoyed killing Catans with it. So it wasn't like it was for no reason. It was for fun. It was just I didn't run into anything that cared about it enough and got Overwatch to kill it to death. So yeah, James, we got a chat from here. Slapshot. James is the reason I started playing Orcs in 40K. That's what's up.
Wow. That's freaking awesome, man. Welcome to Orcs, dude. Okay, so I'm going to give everybody out here a life tip when you're playing Orcs. Don't take yourself too seriously, man. We are literally the joke of this game. Like, there's no, like, serious, we're not the grimdark. We are the lighthearted.
Yeah, that we are the lighthearted. When everybody else is miserable and angry about war, we're the only ones having fun about it, right?
Exactly.
We're
Us,
basking in this
we're the
chaos.
only ones having a good time. But at least we're
Yeah.
not burning.
And then we have as Sludge Disciple, big fan. How often do you play in tournaments? So you already said, you're not super into tournaments, but let's
I play
say
a big GT about once every 3. I do probably 4 GTs a year, maybe.
Okay.
Maybe 5 on a yeah, I would say 4 or 5.
RTTs?
RTTs are hit or miss for me. Quite often they line up on days where I'm busy, and but I do a few RTTs a year as well. Probably about the same number, 4.
Okay, that's what's up.
RTT last weekend, but I was feeling good because I was drinking at my brother's birthday night before.
Oh.
So I played one game very competently, and then I went to my second game, and I was like, man, I probably should have had more sleep last night.
I'm fatigued out.
I was like sitting down while I was playing, and I was like, after turn 3, I was like, dude, let's just shake on it. I need to go drink water and relax.
Hey, like I said, you need a good rep for your opponent. You were being a good rep that day. Don't drink before your
I
game.
wasn't. That's terrible. I mean, he got a great score, but yeah, it's terrible.
He's like, I met Mr. Initiative, and he was just, sick the whole game. He was done.
No, it wasn't like that. This guy knows me. He's a friend of mine. He knew.
And that's what's up. All right, so we have another one here from Murder Mouth. As a fan of you both, has James experienced frustration or trouble in 40K during his early years or anything into 10th edition? And then you just asked about favorite. We'll just say favorite unit because you already said favorite detachment.
Ooh, favorite unit. Let me think about that for a minute. Have I ever, any trouble?
Frustration or troubles about 40K, right?
Oh,
Maybe.
Okay, so here's the thing. I will say this. Frustrations or troubles, no, not really. I mean, every now and again, you're going to meet a player who you just don't mix with, you know what I mean? But at the end of the day, honestly, kill those people with kindness. It's the easiest way. Just try to have the most fun you can have out of your game. But no troubles. I'm just, honestly, I have multiple armies. So when I get bored, which is the only issue that I run into because I'm bad ADD too, right? So I do get bored, and I just jump to another army for a little while, play in the league or whatever, and then I always come back to Orcs though. At the end of the day, I have the most fun playing it. Playing super competitively isn't fun for me either.
I think for the vast majority of people, you'll find far more enjoyment in the long run with playing with your toy soldiers if you play everything as competently and efficiently as you can, but really play with whatever you enjoy most, right? You
celebrate your opponent's successes too.
Yeah, and celebrate you said celebrate your opponent's successes.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, that's a good way to make it enjoyable too, is right. Blowing yourself up in Dread Mob is the best way. I like doing that, where I'm just blow myself up and I'm look at that, dude, that was great.
Oh man, Kareen in Warhorde is a blast. Half the time I know it's a waste of CP, but if it's something that blows up, I'm doing it. I just have to.
Hey, it's not, dude. Sometimes it's game changing because you can move through enemy models, though. It's also a crazy rule when it goes off and no one's expecting it. That randomness.
I have the blue dice too, man. I got that blue luck in my dice. I will get an explosion if I bring 3. I'm getting one. Like, and most of my opponents and friends, they know. They're like, "Oh man, don't let that Morknock get too close with its 2 wounds left. It'll be the one."
And then blow itself up. That so what's your favorite unit?
Careen it right into their home objective.
What's your favorite unit then?
Okay, so my favorite unit.
How about we'll say your favorite model and then your favorite unit to play on the table. We'll play those 2 different, right?
Okay, that's fair. Okay, so my personal favorite model is got to be the Morkanaut magnetized Gorkanaut that I made out of a knight. I'm really proud of that thing. I don't think I invented the idea by any means. I had this old kit and I was like, man, I should orcify this thing. And I built it, and then I looked at it and I was like, man, I had some real strokes of genius here. Like the pilot is hanging on like wires and he's connected back in. He's like hanging where the head would be on the knight, and he's all wired into it. You know what I used? I used a Storm Boy's body. because his toes were like hanging at a good angle like that.
Okay.
Plus, he had the two hands, the one that has like the pistol and the knife on it, but then he's got like the wiring and all that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I really like how that model came out. Plus, it's all magnetized. It can play both Morkanut, Gorkanut.
Okay.
As far as favorite unit in the game, I mean, I just love boys. Lots of boys. I think they're my favorite unit, and I like the old school boys. I like big drooping jaw and broke back badonk, man.
The broke back the badonk out the back, right?
Yeah, I love them. I have new boys too, but you know what? At the end of the day, I'm like, I don't even take those to a tournament. I'm like, I'm taking all this old stuff, the good stuff. Have like rebased onto 32 mil with the 25 glued right on top, and then like rocks to try to hide it.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. That's exactly what I did with my boys.
I'm like, plastic glued together. I couldn't get them apart. I was like, no way, this is too much work.
I had to clip them. You'd have to clip them down into a bunch of pieces, and I was not cleaning up that mess after doing that 100 times. So,
how many did you do? How many did you clip down and do?
What, clip them, or did I just glue on?
Yeah, how many did you clip?
Only about like 20, and then I was good on that. Right?
Dude, kudos for making it to 20, because I did one, and I was like, nah.
I wanted the unit to be synchronized, right? So I wanted them all not to be super tall. But after that, just put them on top, and people are like, you got a weird basing on some of that. You know, like some of my friends are like, that's the weird base. I'm like, I just stuck the base on top of it, dude. It's all good. It's all good. So I'm glad I'm not the only one. Shout out. See, guys, it's normalize that. Normalize that as GW changes some of these models. And
it makes the old models look better next to the new ones anyways, because they're like the same height, right? They're like, or even taller maybe.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. It gives them a little height. I use some of the very old second edition Orc boys and
I have some bigger ones hidden in there.
They need it, right? They need it because those guys are stumpy. Those guys are stumpied up, so they need that extra height. So I definitely like them. And shout out to Aaron, None Your Business for 10 WAAAGH Tactic memberships. Whoa, for Aaron. That's what I'm talking about, boy. Yeah, that's how I like to WAD events too. You know how you just WAD like that? That's how I like to do it.
I will do it loud the first 2 games, but then after that I back off a little bit. But at the same time, if I see other Orc players, I go up and I'm like, man, I ain't hearing your wall on the other side of the other side of the event here. You're gonna have to up a little bit, just a little bit for me.
Yeah, okay. I think I could be louder sometimes. You know, because I do it loud, but I don't think I do it extremely loud where I shake up the place. I try to be a little.
At the tournament, you have to at least once. You gotta bang one out just to keep people on their toes. It's funny because you see a bunch of people like across the the big area. You'll see all their shoulders go.
You know, he says, "Can we get a responsible wall in chat?" That's what I'm talking about. He says,
"Oh, I don't want to crack the mic."
Hey, is Crumping Space Marine Steve as rewarding as it seems from WAPO?
Wow. Yes, it's every bit as rewarding as you think it is. I love Steve. He is one of my earliest people that I met when I came back to the hobby. And as much as what you guys see on Play on Tabletop, Steve is actually a very good Warhammer player. His dice luck carries over into the real world too, though. Like when we have games out here, it's the same stuff, you know. I have lucky dice and Steve doesn't. I don't know what to tell you.
It's real. It's real. You know, he does seem like he doesn't have good dice from everything you see. Sometimes people just say it as like a excuse. But I think we've all seen enough of the games where you're like, all right, dude, you can have that one. You can have that one.
I almost feel like I should just stand over there and just throw his dice for him. Just let me just pick them up and roll your saves for you.
Poor Steve, but he is loved. So the answer is yes, though, to the question. That's
He's a good dude. I love Steve. He's a good dude.
So that's a good way of saying it's rewarding to crump him because he is a good player. He has bad dice rolls.
Yep.
He said, "Have you ever careened a Stampa?" No.
Have I? I think I did careen a Stampa.
You did?
I think so.
I haven't had any dynamic godly ones Koreans like that. We got Jank Tank with whoa. Do either of you do any narrative gaming? So he did it. We answered that question. No,
Not really.
Just because of the time, but yeah, we answered. He said we answered that already. Yeah, but you ask another question, we'll answer it in chat. We have another one we see. We do have, he said, what's your most, okay, this is actually a decent one. What's your most memorable moment in the game? Or even a tournament game or a game, whatever. It doesn't have to be a tournament. It doesn't have to be.
Okay. This one always jumps right to the forefront every time for me. It was to my detriment. It's nothing good that happened for me, because that's never the stuff you really remember forever. The stuff you remember forever is where your plan blows up in your face.
Yes.
And I was playing for the top table in our league. So it was you play 5 games in the league, 1 game every 2 weeks. And I was on a 4-0 run with Orks. And I met up with my friend, Ian McMurtry, and he was playing White Scars back when you could have all the little bikes with the multi-meltas on them. And I was playing a Morkanaut and a bunch of Killicans and a whole bunch of like vehicles, and they were all mobbed up at the beginning, like kind of trying to hide as best they could. But he rolled in and got some angles, and he just blows this Morkanaut up on turn 1. The Morkanaut explodes. Multiple D6 mortals going out everywhere, and by the time it had Meganauts hiding inside, and I rolled 3 1s, so they all died. It was just a chain of explosions. I'm literally 3 explosions back to back, and I lost. I believe we calculated out to 890 points. In a 2,000 point game. Yeah, it was fabulous.
That was that 9th edition. That sounds like some 9th edition stuff.
It was 9th edition, and he was like, "Should we re-rack and just play another game?" And I was like, "No, no, we shouldn't. I want to tell everybody about this. If we re-rack, I can't tell everyone."
We're gonna ride this out. That's a good point. For me, it's funny because one of my funnest moments was this edition, actually playing a Stampa, where you do the whole thing where you're playing Dread Mob and you're doing the strats, and you don't want to take hazardous, so you only shoot 3 guns. That way you take the least amount of hazardous rolls. And I was nearing the end of the game, and I was like, I'm about to actually win this. Let's go. And I just got to shoot these 3 guns to clear a couple of these targets, right? So I shoot them, ready to go. I got 9 wounds left. Roll my 3 hazardous. I go, as long as I survive this, I win. Roll it out. Fail all 3 hazardous checks. Blow my Stampa up. Automatically lose. Yeah, and it was just, he was already looking at the game like, okay, what do I got to do this next turn so I can have a chance to win and all this stuff. I'm like, hold on, hazardous. Boom, 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 dead. I'm like,
so you kind of held it off and then said it at the last moment. You were like, oh man, I got to roll this hazardous. You didn't announce, like, if I roll 3 1s right now, I lose, and then threw the dice.
No, I was so not expecting to roll that terribly, just all of them. I was just nonchalantly like, oh, I might win. Yeah, bro. Like, what could you do to win? I'm looking at the table state. Just throw the dice in the tray. Look at my nice wall tactics tray. Boom, all fails. I just automatically die. I'm like, he looks at me. He's like, is that dead? Is that dead? I'm like, yeah, it's dead. It's dead. You win. We're done. We're done. So that's
end game.
Yeah, that's one of those moments. Exactly. That's how I enjoy it as well. So with that being said about things we enjoy, let's talk about the state of Orcs right now. Not too doom and gloom, because we know about the win rate not being fantastic and such. But let's do a little bit of a middle ground, right? We know that GW is not going to hit rules at the moment. We can concede that for the most part. They most likely won't. Let's keep our expectations somewhat reasonable. So let's talk about a couple point changes you'd like to see, just maybe for diversity or fun, and then maybe a couple rules you do want them to address and talk about. I'll give one away for free. That way we don't get stuck on it too long, since it's really upsetting, is the War Boss being death inside the truck, not being able to get his extra attacks inside the truck. That's just, an odd, the oversight by them that they never sought to fix. That would have been very easy to fix. Switch it to the Mega Knob wording, and where it's wow the wall. So other than that, let's hear a couple point things and a couple, rules. I did video on it, so I won't follow up with it, but how about what do you feel about it?
So, yeah, for point changes, I think that they could. So I'm not going to go over all the ones that everybody's been screaming into the sky forever. Like, yes, we all know that the Mega Knobs didn't need both a point hack and a rule nerf. That was too heavy-handed. We all know that. One or the other, fine. You know what I mean? Either give the point jump and keep the 4 up, feel no pain, which actually I think the other way is better. I think just let us have it at the 5 up, but keep the point, and keep the points the same. I think it was fine. Man, I think Def Copters need to come down a little bit, just a little bit pricey. Speaking of Def Dread, pricey. We all know this. It gets pricey. I don't know, man. But play them with 4 custom Mega Blasters because that's a good time.
Just blow yourself up while you're at it, right?
Yeah, dude. And then careen into their battle line. It's great times all over the place. Oh, it's only 1 mortal wound. I don't care. It's still worth it. You know what I mean? Like, I'll careen a Def Copter. Man, I'm getting off track here.
Yeah, that's cool.
Oh, man, what other... I mean, honestly, I just roll with the punches, dude. I don't go crazy. I just roll with the punches.
Yeah, that's cool. So what rules? What rules are a little upsetting? Let's say maybe...
Okay, so I already went over one. I think that... oh, man. What are they called? The big hunt? The big hunt.
The hunt,
Just make it oath of the moment. Let's just make it oath of the moment. Don't put any stipulations on it. Oath of the moment.
Stipulations. Just pick a unit.
No. Yeah, just make it the same as oath of the moment. You pick a unit, you roll hits against it. You know what I mean? Easy.
You don't want it to be what it is now, or you just want it to operate how oath does, where you pick anything, right?
Yeah, I think you just be able to pick anything.
Yeah, okay.
Why does it need stipulations?
I think we can see oath isn't too powerful where it's at. I don't think having the prey target would be that too powerful either. It would make it that you could take something that's as cheap as possible that has the proper keywords to be into hunt and get it to actually punch up, because you can make something your prey target and get that, okay, now I can actually get the full potential out of this in this fight. I can get a decent little trade out here. I think that is a good, easy fix now. Somewhat easy to fix an entire detachment.
I know they won't do that, but that's an easy fix. You know what I mean? Like just make it the same.
The detachment, them addressing the detachment is one of the biggest things right alongside the war boss thing that I want them to fix, is like give them and then speed, cult of speed needs something, kind of, in my opinion. They're just a little odd that they don't want to do anything with the WAAAGH. And
I wasn't up on the FAQ when that war boss change came out. I wasn't up on it, and I played a game with a buddy, and after the game he called me. He's like, hey man, you know that war boss only gets +1 attacks if he jumps out of a truck, right? And I'm like, what? And then I go searching for the FAQ, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm a loser. And that literally like turned the game. Like 2 war bosses, like I crushed 2 like blood angel jump pack units with those units. Like that war boss probably picked up 4 of them.
Yeah, it made boys and war bosses pretty fun back. But and in Cult of Speed, how Nexus came out and made their detachment rule pretty much pointless, right? You used to want to advance and do actions. Now you're like, oh, I just won't do anything. That's cool. No, I think the hunt needs to become more appealing, because Warhorde right now, it's like, why would I pick the hunt? I would just play Warhorde. Like, why? Right? Why? There has to you have to give us an actual reason for that on what it should be. So I think that's fine. People shouldn't worry about it. Like you said, though, and this is, we're going into the next topic, is about advice for orc players, right? You've been around up and down the block. You were here back in the day when GW didn't give any attention to the community in response to any of the rule changes, updates, didn't really, would you say, have their ear to the ground. What things can you say or give advice to intermediate, newer players that want to, get stuck in with orcs? How can you get them to keep track, stay on the track with the orcs and not really give up on the faction? Because like we were saying when we were talking privately about, orcs are kind of like a specialist faction. They are hard and niche to play. They don't necessarily play like other factions in 40K. You play a variety of other factions who also like to punch and get stuck in, yet they don't play like that. So, what are some takeaways and some things you can concede, like we were discussing, where orcs are kind of like a bully melee army, where we are good at punching armies that aren't good at punching, but then we kind of fall short of actually duking it out with armies that are good at punching, right? That's one thing you kind of learn about orcs as well. It's kind of bullies, kind of trading points for bodies. So what are some tips, advice, things you got to say about orcs that you've learned to come over the years, and what stayed since orcs have been around? What has been a consistent theme of them?
I mean, getting and punching is the way. And if you can get enough boys on the points, you're gonna smack stuff. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, smacking stuff's what makes orcs happy. So just do that. As far as being like, I don't want to go back to talking about being like competitive, but I mean, if you want to be a competitive orc player, you need to spend a lot of money, because the orc meta shifts so wildly all the time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to tell you. Watch online for cheap deals and buy every orc thing you can get, even if it's not good right now, because it's going to be good eventually.
But you're not saying that to advise it. What you're saying is that that's what you would need to be a quote unquote competitive orc player, because the way it ebbs and flows, the meta, the shifts, and what would be
I
good.
see. Yes. Okay.
That's
so,
what you're saying.
You actually put an idea in my head. So you really need to look at your local meta, and then you need to lean into playing against those types of players. But you're going to have the most fun if you can be competitive with the people you play with regularly. So it's good to know, like, oh, I'm going to be playing, Necrons and Guard and, other armies that are going to have a lot of armor. You can kit for that, As far as like just tips on being good, I mean, just play more games, honestly. Just play as many games as you can and study your units. Try to think of combinations of ways to put them together and put them on the table.
What are some consistencies that have been involved in orcs, right? Since they've been in 40K, let's say the random factor seems to be one thing that seems to be consistent, but what else? What else is consistent? How they win by trading bodies for points. Is that consistent in 40K? Are they known to be tough?
Yeah.
Are they tough?
Yeah, attrition, like attrition's in numbers, basically. We've been drowning the table in bodies for as long as I can remember. I've always leaned towards more bodies is good, the boys before toys mentality. I don't know if newer players maybe know that term, boys before toys. Is that a thing?
Well, you can elaborate on that. It is a term for
okay, so like boys before toys, when I was coming up playing orcs, boys before toys meant basically, if you taken as many boys as you can have. Okay, cool. Now, do you have a few characters to lead them? Awesome. Now, are some of them going to ride in some trucks, like some cheap upgrades? I came from, now in 10th edition, we don't pay for war gear, right? No. But in previous editions, we paid for war gear. And when you were taking boys, you weren't paying for war gear. Like, I'm not going to buy a rocket. I'm just going to have another chopper.
Yeah. So the idea is stick to the fundamentals when you are playing out your lists and such, which I think people kind of forget that if you're not playing straight green tide, having just a mass of units on your list is always fundamental to playing orcs, because
MSU, just cheap units, lots of them.
You're always trading bodies for points, board control. That's consistent throughout every edition. One thing I joke about with people playing Warhorde right now is that's essentially been our rule since 8th edition. Exploding sixes, sustained sixes has been our rule. We get a really strong rule. Everybody hates us for it. GW nerfs us with a rocket launcher, and then we fall back onto sustained sixes, and then we ride out the edition on sustained sixes, right? That's kind of how it goes.
It's fine.
It's fine. It's just and that goes back to the small units, having a lot of bodies. You kind of just follow that to a consistency on orcs that you get used to. You have to get used to dying, I would say. A lot of the time,
get used to dying.
You're picking up models, you're picking
staging, practice staging, that kind of stuff. Almost look at it like football running plays. You're kind of staging to the buildings and trying to get as much cover out as much line of sight as you can.
Yeah, I was talking to some guys.
Very intricate. Orcs is very complex. It's not an army that you just pick up and pilot like brain dead. You know what I mean? It's not like playing Storm Wolf, Wolf Jail. Like that's brain dead. I can literally play that at a tournament while I've drank 12 beers during the day and smoked some wacky cigarettes, and I can still run that thing and like beat good armies with it, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And orcs don't really have a lot of things like
You
that.
can't do it with orcs. You can't do it with orcs. You have to be astute. I mean, you got to pay attention. It's a very dynamic army.
So the way I like to talk about it being dynamic, tell me if you disagree, right? Is you know, our army revolves around the wall. And the wall is about you having timing and setup to execute this killing blow and to have perpetual momentum one time in the game on your terms. You call the wall, you set up multiple other turns to execute this game plan up. You hit the enemy with the killing blow, or at least a hard enough blow that they can't get enough speed back and win the game. It's really
Bring
weird.
Back and make them humble.
It's all about timing. We're trying to get that one surgical strike in, hit them fast, hit them hard on the wall, and then that's it, right? We spend the rest of our turns either surviving after the wall or setting up to hit you on the wall. Other armies don't really play like that, where they're constantly playing a similar game plan every turn. They're rinse and repeating. I shoot with this unit, I stack this stratagem, I get these rerolls, I kill an enemy. I stack these stratagems, I get these rerolls, I kill an enemy. That's how other armies will recycle that. We don't play. Our wall turn plays like in no other, you know, battle round the rest of the game. And people don't really understand that when they're an orc player, is that you're setting up for this one-time execution. You know, this is more like a shock assault than Space Marines would even, you know, can really concede to, right? Space Marines like to say that they're the shock assault army, but really orcs kind of play a shock assault style 40k where we're setting up, we're staging up, we're not really doing anything until it's time, and then we blitz you, and then it's all on, and then from that, from our ashes, we're trying to score with our last Gretchen, waving the flag in the background. Yeah, I got points. You know, like oh, damn it, like, you know. So yeah, that's, you got to get used to picking up bodies. You got to get used to being patient. You got to get used to not being the bully army necessarily, but bullying people that are weaker than you in the situations you can. And when you're not, you got to be a little bit cunning and kind of jump people and move block them and do all different shenanigans. It requires you to be diverse in movement and in the combat phase and maximizing units and placements. It's really weird, and that's just a consistency throughout 40k. Would you say? I mean, for orcs throughout 40k for multiple.
Yeah, I mean that what you're describing is definitely probably the most common and straightforward way. I mean, there are ways to build with orcs where you're not relying on the wall, but if you're not, I mean, what kind of orc are you, right?
Yeah, there's that DACA wall that was going around that I gave it a little run, where you're mostly trying to shoot and use a wall to have 100 grots absorb the damage on the wall defensively, and then you're like, I'm standing here. That's different. There are ways to do that, but all in all, generally throughout, you know, since I started, you're trying to give that killing blow, surgical strike to the enemy.
Staging, setting up, preparing, and then you call it, and the wave rolls in.
And that's why you need reps, because it's, you know, the timing of calling the WAAAGH and staging up for it is something that, you know, as much as you watch WAAAGH Tactics, and I appreciate you people, you know, you can't really teach someone the timing of the wall to look at the board state and say, this is when I have to do it, this is where I should be. You know, I can't do every single mission as much as I'd like to eventually, you know, do every single mission in every single deployment zone and tell you, this is where you stage your battle wagon, and this is where you stage this. This is where you know you're going to die. This is where you're going for the objective turn one. This is where you're throwing away a unit to draw out the enemy. There's a bunch of different things that you figure out as an orc player, and that's the beauty about them, in my opinion, is and this is what John Lennon from Art of War said. He said, orcs play a very fair game of 40k, you know, and if you try to beat them at a fair game of 40k, you're most likely going to get beat up. So you got to bring shenanigans and think against us, you know, and that's what John Lennon said from Art of War, and he doesn't really, you know, like orcs, or I wouldn't say he really respects orcs on a competitive level, right? And I don't, no shame in that.
No,
but he did say that, and I like the way he broke that down, where we do play a very fair version of 40k. So as we play a fair version of 40k, it is very behoove of you to understand the fundamentals, the basics, you know, to understand what is the strength and the actual mechanics of each phase of piling in, consolidating, tagging. When you make your charges and you go and swing your big 20-man unit of boys, there's all these different keys and mechanics that other armies don't even have to learn, that we learn, that brings us to your next level of being a proficient orc player, right? When you play with your green tide, how often are you really throwing that tide all over the battlefield and swinging that unit, right? Swinging that unit around the field is how I like to call it, where you charge one unit, then you pile into a different one, and you're like, oopsie, we're in combat now.
Yeah.
You know?
Oh,
So,
and it's my knob and the war boss.
Yeah, right.
The boys are going to pick up the unit.
Yeah,
I keep my war boss and my knob about one base back in the unit when I put them down on the table.
So you're
one line of boys in the front, then the war boss and the knob, then more boys behind them. That way, when I charge, I can jimmy it.
And that's how you should be doing it. And that's only you learn when you actually learn how to play with 20-man unit mobs of boys. Other factions don't have a 20-man unit of killing stuff. Usually they're 20-man unit of chaff garbage. You know, there's not other factions that really learn how to play that. That's why Black Tide catches everybody off guard, because how many Space Marine players even know how to play a big mob or a tide, a horde of Space Marines, right? That's a unique player themselves.
That Luda mob list I just played would play pretty well into it. I don't know if it beats it, but it definitely puts a hurt on a bunch of them.
It does. They're feeling no pain offsets some of the 2 damage. It sucks. Wapo says,
that's true.
Favorite part of hobbying, kit bashing, painting, or playing? Love your army's use of proxies and kit bashings. So I think this is to you. He was just adding me in the chat right now. So what's your favorite part of the hobby? Kit bashing, painting, playing, and that he loves your proxies / your kit bashes, like that Gorkanaut you were mentioning earlier.
Yeah, okay. So definitely playing. I'm a player first. And I mean, it's the main reason I got into games, just to play games with my friends, right? And when I first started out, it was all like beer and pretzels. It was only people I really knew, you know? And then as I got older and then out there more, I met more people. And now there's like a massive community of players in my area. But as far as I love kit bashing stuff and like just taking random models and then orcifying them, you know, it's a good time. Honestly, I'm a good painter. I'm an okay painter. I'm decent. I hate painting. It takes so long. I'm like, I'm so glad that, you know, I have about 19,000 points of orcs fully painted. So, I mean, honestly, at this point, unless they completely axe them all, I could probably play orcs for another 10 years without buying a model. You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure. And that's the satisfaction behind it, is like when you do have them painted and you have stuff done, you're like, yes, that feels so good and that looks so good. But getting to that point is straight torture, which also goes to one of the things we were talking about with advice for the newer orc players is what's too much, right? When it comes to buying, getting overwhelmed with models and stuff. What do you advise as to how to slowly build out your orcs and maybe where to start?
Okay, so I don't want to tell people what to buy because everybody's different. Everybody likes their army different. You know what I mean? But I will say this.
You already said to buy all the boys, dude. No, you can't go back on it. So first boys, buy 100 boys first. No, I was kidding. No, continue.
Spend all your money. Just get out there and find every cheap orc you can find. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, so you sidetracked me there.
eBay. Oh, yeah, I know, right? For sure.
But yeah, no, I love kit bashing. I love making original stuff. And honestly, a lot of it I did out of necessity. The meta shifted. I didn't have enough battle wagons. I was like, oh, I'm going to go hit up the thrift store and stuff and see what I can find. Find like a model truck, bash it apart, orcify the hell out of it, measure it, make sure it's good for dimensions wise, and throw that thing on the table. You know what I mean?
Okay. That
works. Anything can be an orc model if you want it to.
And you put enough work into it, though, right? Be respectful. Don't bring a actual shoebox to the table.
Yeah, no. If it still says Nike on the side, we got a problem.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. So yeah, have you been working on anything for October?
Orc stuff? Actually, yes. Let me grab it. I don't think you'll be able to see it, but that's okay. I'm going to hold it up anyway. I needed another beast boss.
Okay.
I have this guy from so
That the Age of Sigmar. Which model is that?
That is from Blood Bowl.
Oh,
That's WAAAGH Ghoul Chewer or something like that. His name is. I don't. Yeah, I honestly, I hadn't played Blood Bowl in years, and I had it just sitting there, like in my pile of shame, like the whole game. And I pulled it out and I turned it into a new beast boss. Got to get it painted now.
Yeah, that's what's up. I think having multiple beast bosses is where it's at, especially when you're trying to actually play a little bit mean, aggressive, competitive, as some would say. So, Mr. James, as we close this out, tell me, what are some of your thoughts as to being an org player, you know, where you look at 40K as a whole, and what advice you give to people who maybe watch the channel and like to keep their pulse on the meta, yet don't want to get poisoned by the well of chasing the meta?
Yeah, that is true. Man, I'm drawing a blank right now. That was so much so fast.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, dude. Yeah, no, you're all good. Ask again.
So, what is some of the places you want to say? What are some comments you want to give about orcs and playing 40K as a whole, and maybe some tips for people that are newer?
Okay, so 40K for me is just my one hobby that I get to have. I get to spend my money and have a good time. It's just an excuse for me to hang out with my buddies, honestly. The competitive stuff is all fine and good, but the main reason I go is to just hang out with my buddies. Like, I think I have fun at the games and it's a good time, but I have almost just as much fun hanging out afterwards just with my Warhammer friends. You know, we have great conversations talking about the meta and stuff like that. And, you know, I hope that everybody out there can also find their circle like that of, you know, even if it's 3 or 4 people, you know what I mean? Even 2 people, just find your circle and just have fun with it, man. Like, don't take it too seriously. Even if you're playing competitively, social contract, make sure everybody's having a great time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll say it's definitely, I can relate to people who at first take it a little bit to heart, because where you put your money is where your heart is, right? So at the same time, they put a bunch of time and effort and resources into the game, models they picked up. That's why it's important that you don't chase the meta, like James said, where he's like, if you're going to chase it, it's going to cost you a lot of money, right? You were saying that kind of as a joke, because what you were saying is there's a big price to pay for chasing the meta that's not in your best interest. And
there is.
That's one of the things about playing orcs, and what we really want to strive here on the channel, and some things that you also kind of embody, as well as a lot of other good players that appear on here, is that being proficient in our faction, and this faction we call orcs is most of our primary faction, even though we dabble in other things. Our primary faction of playing as orcs is that understanding the fundamentals and the core aspects of the niche that is orcs, right? Trading bodies for points, having a ton of units, having a ton of bodies, dying, not having reliable outcomes, having a really grindy, in the trenches sort of 40K. That is what you're signing up for when you play orc, right? And when you accept that, just like painting all the models is pretty much a grind in itself too, right? The hobbying aspect is just as much of a grind, if not more. Is, you know, the game itself is a grind. So when you do join orcs, that's a part of the reason why we respect and why we really enjoy as a whole. So I think Mr. Jones headphones died. Maybe he switched them out. But either way, we were coming to an end anyways. Okay, we're coming to an end anyways. So with that being said, guys, this is why we wanted to have the conversation with Mr. Initiative, is because, you know, it does take a lot to stay as an org player, to gain respect for your own faction as an org player, and to have the outcomes you want to have as a player, right? And that's something that lessons you learn that Mr. Jones has been a part that has been doing for years, since he was a small kid. So don't get discouraged. Understand that we do like to keep our finger on the pulse that is the meta, but it's not to encourage you to chase the meta. It's actually to encourage you to understand the fundamentals of what is the meta, what makes up the meta, and then finding your own orky way around it. So we would get a wah, but I think your headphones are gone, right? Your headphones are gone. No, we cannot hear you. So, Mr. Mr. James Jones, thank you for joining us. There we go. We heard that one. But there's always one thing to keep in mind is don't cross our wall because we knock your teeth out. Whoa!